Okay. So, Alex, welcome to a live broadcast at Surfacial, and Vidisha is a resident artist at Surfacial this month. So, we are doing lots of extended conversations that Vidisha is kind of anchoring, and she's inviting her friends and artists she's interested in, and all that. So, that's what is happening right now. That's what we are part of. So,
Thank you for the
welcome
invitation.
to what's the echo? Broadcast at Surfacial. And Vidisha is a resident artist at Surfacial this month.
Why is there an echo?
We are doing lots of extensions that Vidisha is kind of anchoring.
Why is that?
And she's inviting her friends and artists she's interested in and all that.
I'm not sure if it's from me or from you.
Right now.
Whose computer is doing this? I don't even know. Okay, wait.
Echo.
Close that. Is this better now?
I think so.
You know what happened? I had YouTube open on my computer.
Ah, all right. So
Yeah.
you were watching the broadcast simultaneously with the transmission.
Yeah. So today we have Alex with us, who's actually sitting at another residency. He's sitting at Westlake right now, which is in upstate New York. And he's an artist who's based out of Brooklyn. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Vidisha.
Prayas, you've disappeared.
No, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, good one.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I flashed a visual. I think we've yeah, the echo has stopped, so now we can.
That's because I was playing it on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Vidisha. I think you should always perform echoes at Hangouts and freak people out. Or something's going wrong.
I think only when the conversation starts to kind of become a little boring. Like your superpower is that your eyes light up, and Vidisha's superpower is that she puts on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my superpower is that I invent superpowers for people that are on Google Hangouts.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, if I give you characters, can you just invent superpowers for each of them? I mean, can you just...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I'll just send you random characters, and then you just script their superpowers, and that will be fantastic.
They have to join the Google Hangouts, and then they'll be granted superpower. This is the way that the superpowers are transmitted.
But they're fictional characters.
Oh, they're fictional characters. All right. Well, maybe you can get someone to impersonate them, and then as those impersonations join the Google Hangouts, and then it becomes performative.
Right. No, but so I've been trying to do these performances in which I invite actors to perform this character, and the actors are in that sense following a script, so they kind of know who this character is. But the problem is that that becomes very incidental. I mean, that becomes very sporadic. So this character has no life outside those enactments. And so it's kind of like imposing inhibition on this character, because he wants to talk all the time, and we just let him talk once in a while.
Right. I see what you mean. Yeah, you almost have to create an avatar, like a computer program, to embody the character that can then live independently and not be bound by someone controlling it.
Yeah, or maybe I need to hire actors not by the day but by the month.
I think so. I mean, I was hired to play that character for 3 hours, but it was difficult because it's like people I know for real, and I can still have a conversation with them, and I only know a particular number of set of dialogues, so I was only able to say those dialogues and not say any dialogue of my own. So that's what happened with with performing that character.
So, Vidisha, would you like to be Hoja Asli for a month?
Yeah, next year maybe.
Yeah. So I have next year's
September.
dates with you.
Next year, July 2016.
Oh, perfect, perfect, perfect. So meanwhile, I'll work with Aishwarya Rai and everyone else, you know.
Totally. Yeah, you just have to do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually I was listening to a story on the radio by this woman who decided to live. She didn't. It wasn't that she wanted to get a sex change or become transgender. She just wanted to live as a man for a year to see what that would be like. And so she went basically undercover. You know, she dressed up as a man and did all the things that, you know, she joined a men's group and they would go bowling and they would go hiking and hunting. She had this amazing story, but at the end she talked about how essentially she's the stress of embodying a completely different persona, of creating a character and then living as that character more or less permanently for extended period of time, how that actually started to completely destabilize her own native personality and her own conception of self. And her psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever finally told her, you know, you have to stop this. You're basically approaching the point of having a nervous breakdown because it's just too psychologically stressful to continue living such an intense double life. Which I found totally fascinating because obviously we all engage in role play and in sort of dress up and you know we all invent sort of personas for ourselves. But you never think that if you take it on to such an extent that it would actually it could really destroy you on some level.
But doesn't it capture something that is a default case anyway? So aren't we like fragmented individuals with lots of characters within us, and the enactment of a singular persona being actually more stressful than breaking into the fragmented self that we are?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's a question that begs a discussion, doesn't it? I mean, and also the degree to which those fragments, how radically different are all those fragments? I mean, if they have a degree of difference which is fairly similar to one another, you know, then maybe it's not as stressful as if you create a fragment that's really different. I mean, in her case, it was a different gender. Where did you go, Fadescha?
I'm here.
Oh,
She just turned herself off.
Hmm.
No, I'm here.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, I have my I would have my biases in that debate, because I really think it's so much in plain sight, the fragmented nature of ourself, right? The porosity of our being, that's so much in plain sight that anyone prepared to argue for the other side is actually engaging in self-delusion.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, I really don't think how anyone can argue for a singular persona.
Yeah, I agree.
Because yeah, I mean, I actually model multiple characters and I enjoy and I kind of write in their voices, and actually think that without, if I were not to do that, I would just be overly investing in this persona of Prayas, which I'm not even that interested in.
Mm. If you had to guess, or if you had to not guess but estimate, how many different personas would you say you have?
I mean, I think it's a process of discovery and opening up. So I'm sure these personas will multiply as they go along. But
Mm.
I think as of now, I sense distinctly three distinctly different voices
Mm.
who actually look at the world in fundamentally different ways.
Mm.
Sometimes even opposed to, their perspectives are even opposed to each other.
Has that created a conflict in your life in terms of trying to reconcile the perspectives of these different voices?
No, it becomes more of a struggle to, so whom are you allowing to lead you at different points, right? So because there are some parts of some voices which are very sure of themselves, and in that sense, very absolute. But
Mm.
sometimes you just need a little bit more ambiguity, and you don't want that kind of absolutist. That you don't want that kind of confidence. So yeah, you kind of vacillate between these voices based on what you actually need at different times.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I'll find myself talking to myself almost in a conversational way, like where if I'm making a decision in a work of art, and I think to myself, okay, I need to. I think that area needs to be red. The color red. That area needs to be the color red. And there'll be another voice that'll come in and that'll say, "Yeah, I think you're right."
Yeah.
And I think, like, what? Okay.
So what do you how do you figure what is art, in the sense, what isn't it a very strange thing?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Vidisha, how do you feel about that?
Um, I don't know actually. I don't know the answer myself, but I was speaking with another friend of mine today for a really long time, and I think one of the I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine for a really long time, and then I think the question that we were having a discussion about was not about art, but it was about curation. So I
Mm.
think even within there's a certain question, and I'm not answering the question about art right now. I don't think I'm going to answer the question about art actually, uh, because a lot of time, like I have been told a lot of different things about curation, where somebody said that it's only assemblage. That's all. That's what curation is.
Mm.
Um, but then I do not. I mean, but of course, and then there are of course like these things that people identify as curation to be. But then, what does this become? Like, what is it that we are doing here right now? It's officially become. I mean, curation is not only about actually just like putting stuff together. Curation is also the idea of kind of presenting new spaces, bringing up new spaces, and inviting people to those spaces and see what happens from there. I mean, what happens within their practice, uh, what happens when you create these new opportunities. So that's another thing that a curator does. So here I'm not answering about art, but I'm just saying that art kind of functions with all these different other structures which kind of work around it. Because maybe, I mean, basic idea of creativity could be something, but it doesn't mean that it becomes art. Because in some sense, art, what one is questioning, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if one is questioning it like that, but art being defined by these certain systems, like just similar to how like the idea of management gets defined by certain systems. I mean, anybody could be a manager, but anybody doesn't participate in demand management. Same thing, like if one is looking at art in that sense, then
No, but how can art be more important or more significantly packaged than life?
nothing can be. I mean, uh,
I mean, I don't like the way art pretends to be more pristine than life itself.
No, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, one doesn't have to. Maybe one is asking that question to art and putting that question to art uh, because it borrows from life so closely, versus a lot of other things. While which is really sad because I mean it's like, but though economics is so much more closer to life actually, because everything within economics is surveyed according to. I mean there are human surveys that happen. So why is that question asked towards art? Like that can be asked towards everything else as well. And yeah,
No, I'm all for critiquing everything and dismantling the whole universe. That's fine. I mean, I'm all for it, and I think I enjoy that maybe as much as you. But I'm just saying art because it is. I mean, it is so people people who you think also can think of some things and model some ideas. So people who are basically some kind of intelligent, these people make art, and then uh, it becomes that much more strange that okay, why is it worth the while of someone as smart as this guy to do something as weird as art?
uh, but Prayas, I want to ask you that what do you mean by what when you are saying art in that statement? What do you mean by art?
Hmm.
So I
So
mean,
is it
yeah,
are you saying that
I just
always
mean
be participating in the system of art?
Yeah, is
no,
it the
no,
art market or the art production system or art as a set of economic principles?
no, art as a context. So as a ontological package, just the category, just the semantics of it, just the lexicon of art. You know, so why would you construe something as art? What does that what is that construction? What is that appropriation of something as art? What does that do in terms of according value to it?
I had I'd read a quote by Andrei Tarkovsky where he defined art as something that brings or communicates spiritual values to people. So, and that's the way he defined it as being distinct from, design or from illustration, or for
I mean,
instance, the way.
I would agree, but more in the sense that that is art as the romantic idea,
Oh, absolutely,
the
absolutely.
universal, the universal, the meta art. But
Yeah, yeah.
as it is participated in and constructed by people and institutions around us, it's a very it's almost it's a joke that falls flat in its face against this whole meta universal very generous romantic idea. So art is if art is about finding the truth, let's say, because spirituality is about finding the truth. So in that sense, if art is also about finding the truth, then how can you lie so bluntly?
How can you lie?
So bluntly, I mean, how can you shamelessly lie if art is about finding the truth?
What is it? What did Picasso say? Art is the great lie that reveals the truth, or something like that. I don't know. I think it's a language, and I think it's what's complex about it is that, as all languages, it's based on both sort of universal principles, but also on historical conventions, which change constantly and unpredictably. Um, and as a language, it's used to communicate any number of things, and I think that's why people ultimately are obsessed with continuing that practice, because it's a form of communication, and I think it's why philosophers are so obsessed with visual artists, because they're sort of dealing with similar ideas, but visual artists oftentimes approach those ideas as a way of thinking that's communicates them in a completely different way.
But maybe I mean I think just picking up from what Prayas is asking, and I might be wrong. I just actually, I mean, what Alex is then saying is that then the artist is anybody who's producing out of whatever is existing, out of life. I mean, that maybe that's not what I mean, just kind of. But what Prayas is asking, I think, is not to do with the practice of it, but the idea of like becoming and presentation of it.
Yeah, the frame of art, in the sense, the frame and also the system through which you assign value, right? So,
that doesn't exist in a vacuum, though. How can you answer that question without taking into account the economics and the whole monetary system that's built around it, the whole promotional system that's built around it, right? I mean, aren't those things completely interconnected?
Yeah, but then does that mean that somebody who was doing the practice of spirituality apparently who can't function within these economics is not art?
Is not what?
Practicing art.
No, it just means that there's different ways of engaging in it, right? I mean, like the land artists who were totally.
No, but the only way that gets acknowledged in history are the ways that fit the historian's perspective. So whoever it is that is constructing the frame of history, at some point it does get constructed. Whatever fits their perspective.
That's a problem with history, right? That's not a problem necessarily with art. It's a problem with the way we.
That's a problem with art, because art internalizes its history as its practice. So if you are in the present, and if you are practicing art in the present, in this moment, then I don't care about what your legacy, what your heritage, what your history is about. I'll do what I feel I need to do as an artist, and that's it. And your job as a historian is try to understand what I do and make sense of it if you can. Otherwise, I'll make sense of it myself, and it's fine.
Yeah, but isn't this also just the problem with the way we as human beings organize meaning out of experiences which have an infinite amount of bits of information and an infinite amount of stimuli? It's that we tell ourselves stories that select one narrative that's composed of one set of ideas, and that necessarily excludes many, many other things. And it's the way that we sort of figure out how to make sense of our lives, which is the same process that sort of, history takes on, or art takes on. You select out of chaos, you select what makes sense as order, you build patterns, and that creates a narrative, and it's a false picture of reality, but it's the picture that you end up choosing because it makes sense to you for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only saying that the way this pattern exists and how it extends is limited by the shadow of history, and that is unnecessary. It's only a discomfort with ambiguity, because there's so much money riding on predicting the patterns. So it's like a match fixing. It's really. And I think that's the problem. So invariably, it is a capital problem, because the capital that we took in as patronage has come back to haunt us by scripting what we do and which patterns we follow, because there's so much money riding on it that it really doesn't make sense for the entities who control capital to play that watch and wait and watch game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's funny, they've been doing all these studies. The biopsychologists have been doing a lot of studies on memory recently, which deal with the way memory is constructed. And they've sort of come to realize two things. Number one is that there's no such thing as a kind of a hard drive in your brain which contains all the memories like a computer does, where you kind of like save a file and then you put it away, and then every time you remember it, you just open it up with your memory application. That actually, memories are composed of multiple bits of information that are stored in multiple parts of the brain. And whenever you remember something, the memory is literally recreated. So it's not that there's like one memory that exists. It's actually your brain reconstructs that event completely anew every single time. And every time it reconstructs that event, it changes it a little bit because it's starting out of these Lego blocks and it's rebuilding the thing. So the most perfect memory in the world exists in the mind of someone who's lost the ability to remember at all, because for them that exists without ever it having been changed, because every time you remember you change it, which is kind of fascinating in terms of just how we are as human beings. But then the other thing that's sort of interesting is that the more they study this, the more they realize that people tend to remember not what they literally experienced, but what makes the best and most interesting story. So they're completely biased because memory serves a social function. It's not just your own private form of, of making sense of the world. You're also sharing the memory, and you recognize that your memories serve to make you either a more interesting person, a less interesting person, someone that comes across as more or less intelligent. There's all of these functions outside of yourself that memory is connected to. So the way we tend to construct memories is closely related to what we perceive as being a really good story to tell. So two people may have experienced the same event and remember it in vastly different ways just based on what they think is a great story after the event.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, and I think the role of narrative, and just in terms of what will be a better story, is really it's a significant role. But then that's exactly why I would question are the ease with which we buy into and follow the story of art instead of constructing our own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that to me that makes a lot of sense, and that's what curators do too. Going back to Vidisha's point, right? It's like creating stories out of these elements.
Right, but like the honesty of the market. The market is honest in the sense that if you really have a bad product, then you won't be able to keep it selling. You won't be able to keep it afloat for a very long time.
Yeah.
So
isn't that fun?
Yeah, I mean that I'm thankful to that honesty, right? So bad products disappear naturally,
yeah.
But that honesty doesn't apply to art.
Oh, I think it does. I've worked at art galleries which had paintings, secondary market works that they had bought when the market was sort of hot, and these were works by like second-rate. It was one of the first galleries I worked at in New York. So they sold a lot of Chagall and Picasso and stuff like that. But then they also sold these kind of like second-rate impressionists and post-impressionists. And they had this one artist, I forget his name, and they had bought his work. I think they bought a bunch of paintings for about $1 million each in the 80s when Japanese investors were flooding the market, and they were buying everything they could because there was this huge economic boom in Japan, and so these guys were buying, you know, real estate in America and fine art from Sotheby's and Christie's. And so this gallery had bought a bunch of this guy's work because it was very popular with the Japanese investors at that time. And the market crashed. And this guy's work, by the way, I'm not a big fan of. I think it's like not even second rate, it's like third rate. So the market crashed, and those pieces, you can't sell them for like $100,000 now. You know, and they're historical. I mean, that guy has a name. He's in history books. You know, like if you look at, you know, art history books, and they can't get rid of them. Also, something recently. There's this gallery that just closed down that was run by this woman named Anna Zarev, and Anna Zarev is this terrible, terrible painter who happened to be the mother of I thought it was a Russian guy, but it turns out it was a Croatian multi-billionaire, right? And like the family was like heavily involved in oil and exporting, importing oil and crude refinement, all this stuff. So anyway, it's like billionaires. And the mom, this sort of matriarch of the family, liked to paint. And she made these like incredibly garish paintings, which looked like if Van Gogh made paintings, but he made all his paintings like 8 feet by 12 feet tall, and he painted them all straight out of the tube. So he never mixed his colors. It was just like, he would just buy like cadmium red, and it's like, okay, cadmium red background with a lot of brushstrokes. Here you go. So they rented this space in the same building that Marion Goodman Gallery, which is one of the most prestigious and best and actually like really best curated galleries in the world, I think. So they rented a space in that building, and they built this incredible edifice with floor-to-ceiling windows. It was 2 stories high. They had an elevator in the middle with this spiral staircase made out of, you know, like polished steel inside. They hired people from museums, like really well-regarded people, to work as directors to run the space. I mean, it was a gorgeous, gorgeous environment. And then, of course, they hired the top advertising and PR firms in New York to basically promote this woman's work. They had ads in every single art publication, and I think they lasted for 4 years. I think they were around for 4 years, and they finally closed about 6 or 7 months ago. And it was kind of nice because it sort of went to show you that, you know, you can hire the best people, you can have the best PR. But if you're selling,
this is about what you're talking. What the stories you're sharing are they're of work that is universally, or let's say even critically, or in the community acknowledged as of not much value, and the market seems to be, you know, have a desire to rally with it. But I'm talking about A-list artists, the so-called A-list artists, whom you perceive as possessing not real value, or at least constructed or fishiness of the value, whatever, or shaky value. Then, yeah, I think the self-critical nature of the market doesn't exist to do garbage collection for what has already gone past the door. So once you have already entered, then what do? That the garbage collector doesn't collect. It just sits at the door and works very hard at being the gatekeeper. But once you're in, you can do anything you want.
yeah, you know, I think it's I think there's a lot. I think you're right. There's a lot to which.
I mean, if one looks at like Sure, I mean, the question is, he would be getting all that money that he's getting for that Instagram screenshots, right? So he's getting the money, but critically, I mean, I don't think people really appreciate what shit he's doing. So I mean, he is a A-list artist. He gets that kind of money for bullshit, but it's still bullshit. So I don't know. I mean, money is not. So even if it comes to A-list, I don't think money is what tells you that, oh, you are appreciated. Right? Or it shouldn't be like a, what what uh, what makes you consider something good or of value. I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, the same way we have, let's say, hybrid valuation spaces in which money and curation, let's say, are intermingled and they look at work. In that same way, I would like it if there is also a very rigid, almost fundamentalist way of looking content just on the basis of content. So no external logic. I don't care if you are looked up to as a kingmaker and if you have a lot of influence and a lot of power, but if you're doing bullshit, I'll call it.
yeah, but I mean, the thing is, then that judgment of a concept is very, very subjective. I mean, it's the same thing that, I mean, then how is
No,
it different from how the money?
it's subjective, but I think it's only fair if you are judging me, then I should be allowed to judge you as well.
So yeah, go ahead. I mean, they are not stopping you. No, but the collectors are not stopping you from. I mean, recently, I think there was an article just recently out, which was, I mean, it's a viral article, which is just talking about how, like, the world's 5 most poorest collections, and people, like, the collectors have spent like lots of money on those collections, and so they are just like bad collectors. So of course there's a space to judge it, but I mean, what do you think is of value? Is the collectors? I mean, now that's the thing. Like, what do you think is of value? Because for him in that art market, if somebody got a resale value, then it's valuable for him. And now, if you think that the space of viral is more powerful or whatever, more impactful in kind of producing value for something else, then that's of value in that space. I mean, I'm asking for, like, how do you, like, think that what space is produced to look at something critically? I mean,
No,
because
but
there are things like that.
but I find the whole democratic argument that you smoke your pipe and I'll smoke mine. I find that very defeating because at one level we can very easily acknowledge how a certain part of the conversation flows only one way, and that direction of that flow is decided by how much you control attention, how do you control how much power you have in deciding relationships, and a lot of other parameters that decides that conversation flows only one way. So we can easily acknowledge that, but then the other when conversation wants to flow the other way, then you want to filter it, then you want to.
Prayas, you know what happened last year? Actually, there was a show which is completely sad. Like, that's absolutely fucked up. That's what happened. There was a show at Hammer, which was basically a curated show about institutional critique, and that's totally stupid because how does a show which was critiquing the institution in the first place land up in an institution? And that's the question that you are asking about, like,
I
I
mean,
mean,
exactly what you're saying. So you cannot read symbols only for the symbolical value. You also have to go outside the frame and see what is their what is their landscape, what is their role in the landscape, right? So and also I think in the narrative of time. So when are you doing it? What are you doing? Where are you doing it?
That's why I really like the land artists from the 60s and the 70s, because essentially they saw this problem and they saw that there's actually no way to work outside of that system unless you make things which literally can't be collected, you know. So if you dig a hole in the earth in the middle of the woods, you know, like there's no way for anyone to buy that, and so it exists outside of the monetary system that you know, problematizes the relationship between artist, collector, gallerist, public. I think art as an asset for the people that collect it, when it exists as an asset, obviously those people have an invested interest to retain the value of that asset.
Yeah.
And so various strategies are employed to protect that asset, just in the same way you would want to protect your house. So you would make sure that there's no termites, you'd remodel the kitchen, whatever. So they employ various strategies, and sometimes those strategies seem normal, and sometimes they're very problematic, because the people that collect also tend to sit on the boards of museums, and they have very close relationships with galleries and with institutions and with things like biennials. But the one thing that they can't protect the asset from is the change in generational taste, and also mounting critical consensus. So they can manipulate critical voices to an extent, but when a critical consensus against a particular art movement or a particular kind of way of working is built, there really isn't much that they can do, you know. Or in the same way as when there's a generational change in taste, you know, like what happened with like neo-expressionism, you know, like it was so hot in the 80s, and then a new generation of collectors and buyers and gallerists came in, and they really didn't have any interest in it, and the market for that work has really never come back. I mean, it's sort of become almost a pariah art movement in the art world.
Prayas, I actually also, I mean, this generational thing, I think it's extremely important, because one of the other things, like if, let's say, if film, I mean, film as a medium is a medium to basically create more consumption. I mean, it's an advertisement. That's the whole thing. That's what a film is. And so the thing is that, I mean, everything around a film can only be successful if everything around that, I mean, if like the articles are concerned about, like I think recently there have been articles which have come out about online dating in India, and I mean those were things which came out like long time ago in other spaces. So there was a lot of like interest in that kind of practice and understanding sociology through that practice of like understanding online dating or whatever. Or I mean, so if people around, if like, so it's not only about artists actually moving towards creating a different kind of art, and I mean just creating a different kind of art, but I think it's also important that everybody else around them, I mean people that, I mean journalists or whoever else who are producing new knowledge or whatever, they all are employed in understanding those things. Like Her is so late, actually. Her as a movie is so late in time. I mean, people were already doing it, you know. It's not, but it came so late. But so then what a lot of other people were doing, they're like, oh, now I understand you. Which is totally stupid, because it's like you are choosing to understand only what's been told to you, and you're not like really putting a mind of your own to understand something which is of importance. Hello, Prayas.
No, I'm here. I mean, you just stopped talking, so I was collecting all of that, and yeah, figured that. No, but you're saying that this whole, it's an environmental responsibility for people who are performing this role of journaling, of knowledge creation, or of this.
Whatever, yeah, whatever creation.
Yeah. But you're saying that it's a ecosystem responsibility for them to behave in a certain way.
It's not the ecosystem responsibility. I'm just saying that if you get rejected, it's not, I mean, you firstly shouldn't participate in the in a certain ecosystem which seems stale to you. That's actually a good idea. That's one step, that, oh, I'm not going to do this, because now you've understood that I'm not a part of stale.
No, but
But
you know, that creates other
maybe
problems.
not everyone is to actually
Voice is
talk about.
gone. I'll convert this to a audio only hangout for a few
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
moments.
I'm losing Vidisha.
Yeah. Vidisha, we missed the last part of what you said.
I don't know what I said. No, I think what I said was, should I turn off my video?
Yeah.
So I think the last thing that I said was, I don't know what I said. What did I say?
No, but I mean, just following the previous thread, I'm just saying. So, but this expectation or this recommendation or this demand for a ecosystem responsibility to be performed isn't that a very two things? Isn't that idealistic, and isn't that really expecting too much when nothing no one really owes you anything at all in this system, because uh, you are not the one who is contributing to the value inflation or the value extraction process. So why should you have any say in it?
You want to say something, Alex? I can see you, but I can't. You can't see me. Anyway,
Um,
no. I'm not actually. I don't think it's your responsibility. I don't think it's idealistic. I'm saying that in a situation, if you choose to do what you want to do, then you do it, you know. And
No,
then,
that's fine. But if you do it, and like you were saying, you can choose not to participate. But that
no, no,
that
I'm saying choose not to participate in the stale system. If the
yeah,
thing is
yeah,
that
yeah,
another,
yeah.
I think another
So,
lot of, sorry.
which is saying that you step out of something. You let's say you place yourself on your self-perceived margins of the bubble or wherever else. Some kind of stepping out. And I mean, I'm just saying that doesn't really, I think that is a kind of martyrdom which doesn't really affect the situation in any way, uh, even by contributing to the way history is constructed. It doesn't do anything. It just allows you to hand over whatever stake you had in the system and say that, okay, you do your thing, I do mine.
No, see, so I mean, there are different ways. It depends on how much do you want to do it. Like, you can also be a cultural producer and multiple functions. You. But that's what I'm saying. Choose what you're trying to do, and that's so. If you do want to like place, what do you call it? If you do want to place, like now it's let's say it's about something else. Now that person's work is interesting, but what you do as a cultural producer is different from this other person's work. So what do you do if you're interested? The thing is that this person is not willing to take, not willing to like participate in the function. So now I think a lot of like questions that were asked through like these 45 minutes, I think a lot of thing is just that looking at the idea of, I mean, just the artist as worker also. Like if I'm saying that that worker's job is a particular job, but then the writer's job is another particular job. So now I'm a writer. This is the artist. The artist has interesting work. I'm really interested in this work. I have some kind of like spaces that I write at, and I kind of produce. I start to produce. I mean, somebody has to take the responsibility of producing more culture around it, right? Like either the artist takes that responsibility or somebody else has to take that responsibility.
Who else would take the, I'm really just getting lost in your use of the word responsibility, actually.
I mean, you asked responsibility. I didn't say responsibility.
No, you
I
just
don't
used
even
it.
think responsibility is anything. No, I mean, I think there's responsibility, but I'm just. You
No,
said that
well,
the artist needs to be responsible.
what is the basis of your responsible behavior? Is it, is it,
Yeah.
yeah, no, is it history? Is it tradition? Is it legacy? Is it ethics? What is it?
Okay.
On
And-
what basis are you demanding a responsible behavior?
Sorry.
On what basis are you demanding a responsible behavior?
I think on basis of respect and I mean, I think we are just bringing this conversation from somewhere else actually. But to answer that question, I think responsibility for me is the idea of mutual respect and ethics. I mean, but ethics can. I mean, I think ethics, and then of course there's a relationship that I understand between ethics and humor. So, but I think there's still ethics important even depending on the location of humor. So for me, uh, because you said ethics, I'm just saying it's mutual respect also. And responsibility also, I mean, why you are asking that the artist needs to be responsible? So because you are saying that the artist then needs to be responsible towards themselves or whatever the practice that they have.
No, I'm just saying that if just by being participants in this system, I think we have a certain ability and right to weed out empty containers or weed out content packages that are demanding more attention than it is due to them or demanding more value assignment than is due to them, and doing so would actually, yeah, that's the only thing which I think is our responsibility, because if we don't puncture the inflated bubbles that govern our own world, then how are we going to set the way we seem in the landscape? How are we going to set that right? And isn't that what we are essentially trying to do? We want to manage the optics around.
So how do you do it? I mean, how do you
Yeah.
do it? You have to interact with that thing, right? How do you do it? I mean, there are different ways. Either you ignore it or you play with it.
You work with in secret, right? You can work. I mean, so many of the strategies for how you do it are so fundamentally opposed to what artists naturally want. They want sort of to be seen. They want exposure. But in order to sort of work outside of that system, it's like you have to do it either in secret or you do it anonymously, or you're like Henry Darger. You're like in your room making it without anyone ever seeing it until you die. Not everyone can be a land artist, right?
Yeah. No, I really, yeah, I think you picked a very relevant, thread. And I think in the affinity of artists in pursuing, attention and just being wanting to be visible, I think that is a very big compromise, because when you say you want attention, you are saying that you're okay with diluting your intensity. And when you say you're okay with that, then that's a slippery slope you're already on.
Why? Why would that be a dilution of your intensity?
No, because I think that attention depletes material. So
I think you're being romantic now.
no, attention depletes material in a very simplistic model, in the sense the more something is seen, the more generally all of us learn how to think about it, and the more we learn to think about something, the less friction there'll be when we encounter it again next time. Essentially cultural
I don't
product.
know. I could argue the opposite, in the sense that if art is a language, language evolves and becomes more interesting and elaborate and expressive through public use rather than private use. And so then when you deploy art as a language to the public, you're actually creating a more interesting language than you would be if you're just doing it in private.
No, I'm just saying that visibility is a very strategic. It's a very strategic thing. So when, how, and how long for do you want to be seen? You know, that needs to be parameterized and configured, because if you just take your visibility to be an empty parameterless thing, then it is just going to exhaust whatever corrosive potential your persona or your idea or whatever it is your construction might have had.
Yeah, who decides those parameters, though? Yeah.
But Prayas, I mean, I don't understand why you say that. I mean,
No,
one is producing multiple personas. Why are you scared of losing one persona to the other?
no, I'm not scared of that at all. I mean, I'm actually ready to discard and jump ship. Once a persona is exhausted. I mean, but I'm saying how soon you want to exhaust it and when you want it to be done should be in part
But
your
why do you think it's
construction.
getting exhausted?
Because attention depletes material. So in the sense, the more you are seen, the more you're becoming part of the landscape. So if there's any friction in movement, then the same thing that makes you move actually corrodes you. So the road corrodes the wheel and the tire, whatever, but that corrosion also allows it to move.
But that implies, or I guess, it implies that the thing that's moving isn't changing while it's being observed.
Yeah, it
I mean, I agree with you if you're a static entity. If you're just an ice cream cone and you're being licked, and there's just a finite amount of ice cream in that cone, and the visibility is like multiple tons licking the cone. Eventually, the cone, there's not going to be any more ice cream left. But I think it's and some artists are like that. Some things are like that. I think the key is you have to, and maybe that's where the personas come in. Is if you're replenishing yourself, then visibility doesn't necessarily have to be corrosive. But I think it depends on the.
I think what you are asking about what you are suggesting about the dynamic nature of the projections is actually something very similar to the personas. So that dynamism is a shift in who you are at that in that instance of exposure. And if that keeps shifting, then yes, you are negotiating different ways to allow yourself to suffer exposure for a longer time.
Yeah, because and some things can't be created outside of the arena of exposure, right? I mean,
yeah,
some works are completely dependent on that. I mean, like going back to something very traditional, like Sistine Chapel ceiling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that would have ever been created as a private enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, it just needed to be on that stage, on that, in that space, yeah.
Yeah.
But as you are saying that your visibility, one of the other things that you're saying is the more visible you are, the less intense you start to get. While when you actually speak about attention, even if, and how Surfacial talks about attention. Also, it's like, so people only have this certain amount of attention, right? And so are you saying that even if they go intensely into something, I do not think they actually register more than what they had already registered with that small amount of thing that like a single text could have also done.
Wait, say that again, Fadescha. What's the last part? Even if.
No. I was just saying that uh, that let's say the way the attention towards or commitment towards looking at somebody's work or being interested in something, one is only reading up till the headline. One is not reading. And even if one is reading more than the headline, I really don't think. But what still stays with you is the headline and maybe the pull quotes. So, but that does not mean that people have engaged with all that you have to give. So when I'm asking Prayas, is like you're talking about visibility. The more visible you become, the less intense you become.
Yeah.
You think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean,
I think intensity multiplies.
no. It's a very simple thing. So if you are holding a conversation with one person or with 25 people in the room, and if you're trying to keep each of them engaged, then uh, you will have to gradually keep simplifying the I mean, keep diluting the intensity of whatever we're talking about. So if you see political speeches where politicians are talking to 500,000 people or even more than that, then you'll see that essentially they're saying nothing at all, because they have to say something so simple that it can resonate with such a wide group. And if it's something you say, if you
Like
say
a
something
fortune
very
I mean,
uh,
it's like a fortune cookie. I mean, what you are
uh,
saying, that the idea of resonating with multiple people. But that even a
uh,
fortune cookie does, right? Like it says, oh, this is about me, but it's not
uh,
about and it's about no one. And it's just, but I don't, but then there is no interest in that kind of artist also. I mean, then why is that artist intense actually?
you're saying the fortune cookie artist.
No. Fortune cookie artist is excellent. But I'm just saying, I mean, that's just only because it's just the fortune cookie. I'm talking about the political speech. Like,
But so I'm saying that the A list, let's say the A list of the A
yeah,
list artist is not very dissimilar from the politicians trying to speak to 500,000 people. Is not is similar, of course, relatively much smaller, similar kind of dilution that is happening there.
hmm. But I think that probably has to do with a lot of art. Now, this is like 1 minute, but it's a very big conversation. But I mean, it has to do with the idea of the object hysteria within the art. Like, how can the art exist without object? And the same thing, I mean, this is the same thing that happens with like the land artist as well. When James Terrell's volcano, actually, which he's created, which is located in one place, cannot be moved. So James Terrell spaces that he participates in. So it's the hysteria around object, that art doesn't exist without the object. So since whenever object gets introduced within something, it already becomes social. It already becomes adaptable by like 5,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Yeah, no, so I mean, I don't know. What do you think? So I think. So yeah, I mean, so it's like A-list artist is meant to produce the object, and object is already something which anybody can engage with. It's 11.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mean, it is, it might be one of those, the object might actually be one of those symptoms which is produced in that sense for that purpose, to
Nope, we lost you.
be writing off an ability of people that they might have had to actually understand whatever you're doing, because people don't really have a capacity to understand too much abstraction. That is the general sentiment.
Yeah, and I think there's also, I mean, objects become sort of A-list through a variety of different paths. I don't think it's, I don't think all objects reach that state
No, yeah,
the same way. You know, like there's some works become that way through the art world version of, you know, crowdsourcing and focus grouping. You know, like by the time, you know, Jeff Koons reaches to market, you know, it's been, you know, it's gone through so many different test groups, you know, in the art world version way.
really.
Which is very different than like a Marcel Broders who died, you know, relatively young, and is now revered, and that the way that his works have gained critical and commercial attention has taken a very different path.
But are you saying that you that artists actually use the processes of reverse engineering, right? That otherwise industrial sector relies on, that design actually relies on, in preempting your desire, right? Are you saying that that is overtly used, or you are drawing a parallel?
Yeah, no, I think that there's not necessarily anything wrong with listening to an audience. You know, Kubrick did it when he was making 2001. He showed his movie to a test audience, and you know,
Yeah, but
like
in cinema and in all other media, it's not very unconventional to do that. For a filmmaker to do small screenings for smaller groups is expected before the final edit. But in art, I have not really heard of this. You know, but this.
well, artists do it with each other. You know, right? So it's like you kind of submit your
Oh
work.
yeah, yeah. So you
Sure.
invite artists to your studio.
Yeah, studio visits, and I mean, you may do studio visits with people that aren't necessarily artists, but people that you really trust and whose opinions, you know, you trust in, you know, and that's like a form of peer review.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I mean, that's kind of actually that as a practice, I would say, is really missing.
Is really missing.
I mean, it is missing in India. The idea of the studio visit, because I mean, of course, it happens when it's the classroom setting and it's the class groups, or one is at school, it's happening. But when one is asking for studio visit right now, people are interested in like, oh, this is edition. This is like, can I sell my work to you? This is my PowerPoint. This is my like. So that is not really a studio visit. So I think Prayas, that's something that is really missing in terms of practice.
Yeah, yeah, we don't have that kind of stage for peer exchange.
Yeah, that's something really missing as a practice. I mean, I think even though people do try to set up these kind of things, there are politics within that as well. And I think it needs to become, I think there needs to be more parties. And I think parties are like a very, very important thing for idea of like creating solidarity. And like, if there is no trust, there is no studio visit, and there's no point having a studio visit, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, those are all things which are kind of not, I mean, those are all parts of peer reviews or everything.
Yeah. So we have finished our hour. It's 11 p.m. So Alex, it's been great talking to you, and it would be great if you have time later on in the month. It would be great if maybe Vidisha invites you again, and we are here again.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be wonderful. I think it's a perfect time because I'm doing a residency here, and so these topics are on my mind, and I'm in the midst of sort of peer review and all this kind of stuff. And Vidisha is obviously, and you know, so yeah, I love the conversation. I'd love to engage in another one.
Great. So Vidisha, any wrapping thoughts, or we stop?
No, we are good. We are over time. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone. See you.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.